Hello and welcome to this Java tutorial. So in the previous video, we saw how to write your first Java program, which was a hello world program. That was just a simple program, right? To display text. Now, if you are going to do anything more serious than writing a simple hello world program, then you will definitely define some variables to store some values. Take an example of a simple program of calculating simple interest. For this program also, you will need something to store values of principal, rate and duration, right? So what you'll write is, this will be your formula, right? So you'll need something to store the values of these so that you can run like this. So that's something which you'll need to store values is a variable. So now let's say while storing these values, right? These principal, rate and duration, let's say you know that principal will be a whole number, means without any decimal, a number without any decimal, and duration will also be same. But rate of interest may be a number with decimal, like 6.5% rate of interest or 7.25%, which means these variables may have different data types also. So in the next couple of videos, we'll see what are variables and what are data types in Java. And we'll start with data types. So that is the topic of this video, data types in Java. So Java programming language is statically typed, which means every variable must first be declared with a specific type before it is used. Okay, so suppose you declare a variable test which is of type int. So that is what you will write. What it means is you are saying I have a variable with name as test, which is of type int, that is integer, and it has an initial value of 1. So that's what this statement means. So there are actually two categories of data types in Java. So there is primitive data type and then there is non-primitive data type. So primitive data types are predefined by the language. What you mean by this predefined by the language, we'll come to that. And some examples of primitive data types are like int, float, double. And then you have non-primitive data types, which are user-defined types like classes and interfaces and string, array, all that comes under non-primitive data types. So in this video, we'll explore the primitive data types in Java. So coming to primitive data types. So primitive types are predefined by the language and represented using reserved keywords. So these are the 8 primitive data types which are given by Java. So you have byte, then short, then int, then long, then float, then double, then boolean, then char. So if you see out of these 8, first 6 are for numbers, right? So actually, based on this only, you can categorize these primitive data types into 4 groups. So you have integers, you have floating point number, you have boolean, you have characters. So first 4 come under integer, which are these byte, short, int, long. Integer means they can only have whole number, not a number with decimal. So if you are using any of these type, then maybe you can store 5 or 100, but not 20.22. That will be an error. If you want to store a decimal number, then you have to use this category, floating point numbers, where you have float and double. These can store decimal values. Then there is a boolean, which can only store two values, true or false. And then there is a char, which can store only a single character. Officially, it is actually char, but mostly people pronounce it char only for character, short of character. So I'll be using that. So here you can store a single character. So some character A, B, or one. That's what you can store in this char data type. So these are your 8 data types with their categories. Now we come to the first category, which is integer data types. So within that, the smaller one is byte, which can store 1 byte only. So that's what it takes in the memory, 1 byte, that is 8 bit. And it is signed to complement integers. That means it can store both negative and positive values. It's a signed integer. Since range is very less, minimum value is minus 128, maximum is 127. Here one less because of 0. So minus 128 to minus 1 and 0 to 127. Same way there is short, which takes 2 bytes. Range is minus 32,768 to 32,767. So here you see, right, this all is predefined. That's what you mean by predefined. That when I say, let's say you take byte B, that means Java knows that it has to give 1 bit byte memory for this, and what you can store is within this range. All that is already known. That is why primitive data types are predefined. Okay, so that is clear, I guess. Now coming to the third type, which is int, that stores 4 bytes, which has a minimum value of minus 2 to the power 31 and a maximum value of 2 to the power 31 minus 1, which is a pretty big range. So this range, right, value, I mean, minimum and maximum, that whole range, there is a formula also which you can use. So if it is an n-bit signed integer, then range is minus 2 to the power n minus 1 to 2 to the power n minus 1 minus 1. Right? So if we take int, which is 32-bit, so 32 minus 1, minus 2 to the power 31. That's what you get here. And 2 to the power 31 minus 1. Right? That is how you can calculate for these integers. Then biggest one within the integer category is long, which can take storage of 8 bytes. And the minimum value is minus 2 to the power 63. Maximum is 2 to the power 63 minus 1. And range is quite huge actually. So mostly you will use int. That will be sufficient for many values, but if you need a bigger one, then you can use long, but that will take more storage. All right. So with that, let's first see an example where we use these 4 data types at least. Let's declare some variables and see how they behave. Okay, so we'll create a new class to create this example. So new class, let's name it all data types. Okay, so we have this structure already there. Now we can create some variables. So let's say byte b equal to, so its range is minus 128 to plus 127. So if I take 127, that is okay, plus. But if I take 128, I'll get an error. Cannot convert from int to byte. Then it takes it as int because it has gone out of the range of byte. But with minus, this is okay, right? Because then that is in range. So error is gone. And in short, s equal to, I can take 32,767. That is okay. But if I take, let's say 77, then it is also out of the range of short. All right. So let's bring it back to some number which is within range. Then int I equal to, can take some value, long L equal to, again I can take some value. So with long, actually, to denote that it is a long value, you can also use a letter small l or capital L on this side, this or this. So with long, actually, if you are writing, then capital L is preferred because small l may look like 1, right? You may confuse it with 1. So this is the preferred way. Now if I have to So these values, so value of b is a plus b. Then I can just copy same thing and change here s I I L and L. So we get these values, right? Now, one thing I wanted to talk about is suppose this byte I change it to 5. Now let's say I add 1 to it. We may think now the value is 5 plus 1, 6. So that is within the range of bytes. So I can store it in byte variable, variable which is of type byte. But as you see, you get an error that cannot convert from int to byte. What happens is if you use byte, short, or char in any arithmetic operation, then Java promotes it to int automatically. That is why you are getting this error. So you have to take it in int. So there is a separate video where I have discussed this automatic numeric type promotion in detail. So you can have a look at that video to know more details about this feature of automatic numeric type promotion. Just telling you here also. So these are our 4 integer types within the primitive data types. Now, if we go back to floating point types, so we have 2 floating point types, which means types which can store decimal values. So there is float, which is a single precision value, which means not very accurate, and it takes storage of 4 bytes. So this data type should never be used for precise values where round of errors may cause problem. Okay, because it is not very precise. So for an example, if you see, if I do like this, 1 minus 0.52f, then result you may get is 0.48000002. This part is extra, right? Actual result will be 0.48, but it may give like this. So if you want exact value, accurate value, then float is not a good choice. And another thing about float is when you are creating a float variable, you should use capital F or small f on this side, like in long, right? Same way. Otherwise, it will be treated as a double. Okay. Another data type within floating point is double, which takes storage of 8 bytes. So it has more precision than float, but still it is not exactly accurate. So there is a separate class, actually big decimal, that in Java, which you can use if you want accurate value, right? If you want to take in currency where you need exact value, then that is the class big decimal which you can use. With double and float, you may have some errors. Okay, so coming back to these data types, let's go back and create some more variables of type float and double. So within this, if I go and create float f equal to 78.98, if I just do like this, it will be an error. It will treat it as double. So if I have to tell it this is float, I have to use small f or capital F, and double D equal to say some value, right? Then I can print these also. So F is F, D is D. With that, if I run, I get these values, right? Now, what I was telling, right? If we have to do that, let's change it to take the same thing 0.52f and float, say r equal to 1 minus this f. Then if we print this r also, r is r. So if you see, it is not exactly 0.48. You are getting some extra 0.000002. So that's what you mean by not getting the exact value with float and even with double. Though here double may work. If I change it to double and double here, then if you see, okay, still I'm not getting the correct value. Okay, it is because of this, I guess. Now I'm getting right with double. So these are some points about these floating number data types. Now let's go back to another data type, which is Boolean. So here you can have only two values, right? True and false. So that generally you use with some condition like if for loop while, where you need some condition, right? Conditional statement like if or loop statement like while, that's where you'll use it to find out whether your condition is false or true. We have to use that one. Let's take a Boolean variable with initial value as false. Now if we create if condition, if flag, we have not gone through if, but that is if condition where you only go within this if block if this condition is true. If we print something here in if block, so it won't run right now, it won't go here because right now it is false. So if false, then it won't go in this block. So you don't get this value. If I change it to true, save it and then run, then I get this in if block. So that is how you will use this boolean with true or false value and in some condition. Then the last one is char, which takes 2 bytes as storage. With 2 bytes, it has enough storage to store not only English alphabets but a whole Unicode character range, which involves many special characters also. So wide range of symbols and letters from different languages. Okay. So minimum value of char is /u0000, which is equivalent to 0 kind of in number, and maximum is this, which is equivalent to 65535. So internally, char is stored as integer only, number. And one more thing, which is quite important also, with char value, you should always enclose it in single quotes like this. Let's try to create a variable and see. Suppose char C. So I have to take some value, then it has to be in single quotes. Let's say A. The value of C is C. Now if I print it, you get value of C is A. So one more thing is, suppose I have this, right, char C1. As I was telling, internally it is stored as integer also only. So you can take an integer yourself also. Main thing is when you print it, value of C1 is C1. So you get capital A, which is actual representation of this number in character. If I change it to 66, then it gives you capital B, next number. Okay, so character with, you need single quote. Now one thing about these data types is, till now what we are doing is we are giving a value. But suppose you don't give a value. So it has some default value also given by Java itself. If you just declare it and don't initialize it, then you will get the default values, which is 0 for all the integers data types, 0000 for byte, short, int, long. For floating, it is 0.0. For char, it is, which is equivalent to 0, and for boolean, it is false. So these are the default values. We have to see that. Actually, I'll have to do some object oriented kind of things, a class structure. So let me get that code. You don't understand it right now, that is okay. So what we can do is we can create variables. So all 8 are created here, and if you see, they are just declared. No value is given here, right? Then this is a constructor actually, where we print these variables. So we are directly printing, not giving any value. And if I have to run this constructor, then I have to create a object of this type. Is why I said if you don't know all this, then maybe a little bit too much. But just to show you default values, you see, right? Default values. Byte is 0, short is 0, int is 0, long is 0, float and double 0.0. Char is you don't get any value, default value. You get an empty space. Boolean is false. We have not given any value here. It is coming by default. So these are the default values of these data types when you don't give value yourself. Now we can't leave data types without talking about string. So we have to have a special mention of strings. So it is not actually a primitive data type. String is a class in Java. If you have to use it, you will create object of this class, string class. But what happens is Java gives a special way to create a string which looks just like how you use primitive types, right? So you do int I equal to 5. So that is also same, right? String s is equal to, this is a string which we have to enclose in double quotes. So with char you use single quotes, with string you have to use double quotes. So let's try to use it. The string str equal to, this is a string. In double quotes you have to give it, don't forget that. Then value of str is str. I'll get that string, right? So internally it is still creating object of this str is a object, all that is happening. But for you can say it is just like any other primitive data type, how you have declared this char or this double. Same way you can declare a string. Only thing is you need double quotes. Value you give has to be enclosed in double quotes. All right, so this is your 8 primitive data types and an example which shows how you can use these data types with variables. Thanks for watching the video. Please don't forget to like and subscribe.